Hey alumni, welcome to InterVarsity World Changers, the podcast celebrating God's world-changing work in and through InterVarsity alumni just like you. I'm your host, John Steele, and today we're talking about this new podcast that we're launching. What is an InterVarsity World Changer? What kind of guests can you expect? When will you be able to listen to episodes? We're going to cover all of that, plus you're going to get your very first taste of an upcoming episode. But first, by way of introductions, as I mentioned before, I'm John Steele, and I'll be your host for the podcast. I've been on staff with InterVarsity since about 2012. I was a campus staff in Mankato, Minnesota for nearly a decade, and now I work as a media producer for the InterVarsity Alumni Relations team. And in addition to this podcast, I host and produce another InterVarsity alumni podcast called After 4. Our focus there is to provide practical resources for alumni who are in their first year of life after graduation. So if you're listening, and that sounds like you, if you're a recent grad navigating your post-graduation life, then hey, go check out After 4 as well. We've got 100 episodes across many different topics that you can peruse there and provide you with some encouragement as you navigate this new season of life. Outside of work, my wife Caitlin and I still live in Mankato, Minnesota, and we have 2 daughters. We're majorly invested in our local church community, and we are InterVarsity alumni. I met Ivy as a clinical psych grad student at Minnesota State Mankato in 2009, and just like you, InterVarsity has played an invaluable and formational role in my discipleship with Jesus. And that brings us to this podcast. This podcast exists for alumni just like you and me, people who have had a formational experience with InterVarsity and who are growing in our love for God, His Word, His people of every ethnicity and culture, and His purposes in the world. In short, world changers. And we think alumni like you and me have some great stories to celebrate about the ways that God is inviting us to change the world with Him. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to celebrate those stories together. Every month, you're going to get to hear from an alum like you who's learning what it looks like to partner with God in their context and in their sphere of influence. And as you listen, I am confident that you're going to be encouraged to keep leaning into the ways that God is inviting you to partner with Him in your context. This podcast isn't just about world changers, it's for world changers, and that's what you are. So, when do you get to hear these stories? Well, sooner than you might think. Starting tomorrow, we're going to start releasing episodes. We're going to release 4 conversations this week between the 2nd and the 5th, and then we'll release one more on Wednesday, the 10th of January. Yeah, it's a weird schedule, I know, but here's why we're doing it. We want you to get a few episodes right away to enjoy this first week of January. Then starting next week on the 10th, we're going to start releasing at our regular pace, at least for now, which is the 2nd Wednesday of every month. And that probably still feels like a confusing release schedule. Who thinks about their months in terms of 2nd Wednesdays? So here's my recommendation. Just lovingly tap that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and let Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen, let them do the hard work of reminding you when a new episode is dropped. Okay, enough logistics. Let's get a feel for what this podcast is going to be all about. Here is a 5-minute clip from tomorrow's debut episode with Smiley Abrams as he starts to share his world changer story and the vision of the Andy Abrams Foundation. Enjoy. Smiley, you know as well as me that in the culture of InterVarsity, we talk about lives transformed, campuses renewed, world changers developed. And Here on this podcast, we would love to talk about any of those things, but we're going to lean into world changers developed.
Okay, all right.
What does it mean for an alum like you to be a world changer? And so as we define what an InterVarsity World Changer looks like, this is the way that we lay it out. There's 2 main components, and that's first, someone that's had a formative experience with InterVarsity. Anybody can be a world changer, but to be an InterVarsity World Changer, it helps to have had a formative experience with InterVarsity.
Absolutely.
And then the second piece of those 4 loves that we talk about with InterVarsity as well, the growing in love for God, in love for His Word, for His people of every ethnicity and culture, and in love with His purposes in the world. And so when we think about those things together, that's the foundation that we lay for what it looks like to talk about being an InterVarsity World Changer. And Smiley, you are a world changer. God is using you to build his kingdom in the context that he has placed you in. So we've alluded to this already a little bit, but please, would you just give us a history here? What is the Andy Abrams Foundation and where did it come from?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's weird as I equip people and tell people often that they are world changers. It's just definitely different to hear that someone says that about me. So,
well, it's true. It's true. Lest we forget, it's true.
So that's what my purpose. I really desire that. So, when I became the area director, I want as an area director does well, hire more people. Like that's part of the idea is like, I think this is a great job. And part of the work of an area director is to have more staff to serve the ministry and serve the mission. And so,
yes.
As I was thinking about how the Lord sustained me over time to be in ministry for so long, it was really one way was that I inherited a property from my family and I was able to rent that out and I was able to use that beyond the challenges of fund development, fundraising. And so I saw that and I was like, yeah, what if I was able to create something that could help other people that don't have inheritance and maybe create something that can build some resources to help sustain ministry. And that's really where the vision came about of doing a discipleship house, to have a house where that can bring the resources to ministry work. But then also I was able to live in community at the Spencer Perkins Center with the John Perkins Foundation for a few years. And I used that time to build a lot of the work at Jackson State. And that I saw the impact of how community living both could help students long-term, but also it built fellowship on campus. And so I'm like, you know what if I was able to do both at the same time? And so I ended up buying a property not too far from campus, which continues to still needs a whole new renovation completely. But when I bought the property, I began to pray over the space and I was reminded of when I was a child. I grew up in the neighborhood. My dad was working with Voice of Calvary Ministries, which is the ministry that John Perkins founded, in the neighborhood, helping people to become first-time homeowners. I was around there every day. At 6 years old, my dad is helping people do this in the community, and I'm just observing it. So he passed away when I was 16, it's almost 21 years. And during that time, when I was a kid, I saw the impact that he made on lives. And of course, he made an impact on my life. He discipled me, poured a lot into me, and developed who I am as a leader. And so he never wrote a book, never published a book, never, wasn't a national speaker. And, most people won't know his name. But the impact that he made on me is transformational. And so part of the what I would desire to do is to honor him and his legacy that he made. And so I created a nonprofit in honor of him called the Andy Abrams Foundation. So that's his name, Andy Abrams.
Okay.
So it's after him. And me and my sister were thinking through ways to honor him well. And so that was part of what that was. And then the idea is that it's used to develop leaders and really taking a lot of the principles from what I do in InterVarsity and just moving it to another level beyond the campus level. And that's pretty much what the purpose of it is to help transition, not necessarily just transition, but helping, whether it's recent alum or seniors in college, to move to another level in their own leadership.
Thanks for tuning in, alumni. I hope you enjoyed this small taste of what's to come on the InterVarsity World Changers podcast. Remember that episodes start dropping tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe and share with other alumni who need to hear these stories. I'm excited to go on this journey with you. Let's go change that world, alumni. Thanks for listening to InterVarsity World Changers. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Santera, and our theme song is Crazy by InterVarsity alumnus Andy Minio.